Hello, students, and welcome back. In today's Explainer, we're jumping right back into part 2 of James Herriot's wonderful story, A Triumphs of Surgery. Now, if you remember from last time, poor Tricky was taken away from his super pampered life and brought to the vet clinic. So let's see how his recovery actually begins. Okay, so let's start with a bit of a puzzle. How on earth do you cure a very, very sick animal without using a single pill or injection? I mean, is that even possible? Well, this is the big mystery of our story today. And the answer, well, it's way simpler and more brilliant than you might think. Keep that question in your head as we go through this. So Tricky arrives at the surgery, and our vet, Mr. Herriot, he immediately starts this very unconventional treatment plan. There's no fancy equipment, no complicated procedures. Instead, Tricky gets introduced to a very new and, for him, a very, very strange routine. So students, notice how slow and steady this recovery is. For the first 2 whole days, Tricky gets no food. At all. Just plenty of water. And yeah, he's sluggish, doesn't move much. But then, by the end of day 2, a little spark comes back. He actually starts looking around. And on day 3, we get a breakthrough. He begins to whimper, actually responding to the other dogs. This shows us that his natural dog instincts are slowly but surely waking up inside him. So with that tiny spark of life returning, the next phase of Tricky's treatment begins. And this part had nothing to do with medicine. It was all about education. He basically had to unlearn all those pampered habits and learn how to be a real dog. And what does that mean? It meant he had to join the pack. I want you to just picture this scene. It's feeding time. A door opens, and it is a mad dash. All the dogs just rush towards their food bowls. It's this wild but friendly competition. If you eat too slowly, another dog might just help you finish your leftovers. This was a huge lesson for Tricky, who was used to having every meal served to him on a platter. For the first time in his life, he had to compete. And this slide just perfectly shows the huge difference between his 2 lives, right? With Mrs. Pumphrey, life was all about luxury, velvet cushions, and doing absolutely nothing. He was kind of like an object to be pampered. But at the surgery, life was about community, energy, and, well, survival of the fittest. In a playful way, of course. He was finally becoming a living, breathing animal again. So, the really important point here is that Tricky discovered joys he never even knew existed. He learned the thrill of being part of a group, the satisfaction of fighting for his own food, the pure freedom of just running around with his friends, and even the excitement of hunting rats in the henhouse at night. He was finally living a natural, happy dog's life. Now, while Tricky is having the absolute time of his life, there's this hilarious little side story developing back home. Mrs. Pumphrey is, well, to put it mildly, she's freaking out about her little dog. And her concern, it leads to some very unexpected benefits for the vet. Can you just imagine being Mr. Herriot? Mrs. Pumphrey is calling constantly, ringing like a dozen times a day, desperate for the latest bulletins on Tricky's health. She's asking about his favorite cushions, his little tweed coats, but the vet, he's clever. He just dodges those questions and tells her that her little dog is out of danger and recovering just fine. So because she thinks Tricky must be weak from his recovery, Mrs. Pumphrey starts sending supplies to build up his strength. First, it's 24 fresh eggs a day. Then she starts sending bottles of wine to enrich his blood. And finally, to top it all off, she sends bottles of brandy to help his constitution. I mean, what a treatment plan. But here's the punchline. You think any of that stuff actually got to Tricky? No way. Mr. Herriot and his staff had a very happy time, as he puts it. They started their days with extra eggs, had a bit of wine with lunch, and then gathered around the fire at night for a ceremonial glass of brandy. It was, as the vet says, a real temptation to just keep Tricky on as a permanent guest. All right, let's get to the climax of our story. After a couple of weeks of this very effective, if a bit unusual, treatment, the day finally comes for Tricky to go home. And the dog that's about to be picked up is, well, he's completely transformed. And think about this. It only took 2 weeks, a fortnight, that's it. In just 14 days, Tricky went from being this bloated, lifeless sausage of a dog to a healthy, active animal. It's an absolutely incredible turnaround that just shows you the power of a simple, disciplined lifestyle. The author uses a fantastic word to describe the new Tricky, life. It means thin, supple, and graceful. He wasn't a soft, overfed lump anymore. No, he was now a hard-muscled animal, his body lean and ready for action. This word just perfectly captures his amazing physical change. And the reunion scene is just pure joy. The second Tricky sees his mistress, he just takes off. He launches himself from Mr. Harriet's arms in this tremendous leap, sailing right through the air and landing straight in Mrs. Pumphrey's lap. She is overjoyed, but also probably a little shocked by this incredible burst of energy from the dog she last saw practically at death's door. So, this brings us right to the title of the story itself. As Mrs. Pumphrey is leaving, she declares Tricky's recovery to be a triumph of surgery. But we know there was no actual surgery, right? So what does she mean? And what was the real cure? So as she drives away, tears of joy just shining in her eyes, she exclaims, "Oh, Mr. Harriet, this is a triumph of surgery." See, in her mind, the only way such a miraculous recovery could have possibly happened is through some kind of brilliant and complicated medical operation. But let's ask ourselves the real question here. What was the actual surgery? What was the treatment that saved Tricky's life? It wasn't performed with a scalpel, but with a whole lot of wisdom and common sense. Here it is. This was Tricky's true treatment plan. The surgery was literally cutting away all the layers of overindulgence. It was a controlled diet, lots of water, daily exercise with friends, and a disciplined routine. The cure wasn't about adding something, like medicine. It was about taking away all the harmful extras. And so, students, the key takeaway from this whole story is a really powerful one. Love isn't about giving in to every single desire. Sometimes true care means you have to set boundaries and say no. Over-pampering, whether it's for a pet or a person, can actually be way more damaging than helpful. A balanced, disciplined life is just essential for health and happiness. So, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Mrs. Pumphrey clearly loved Tricky to pieces, but her love almost killed him. Mr. Harriet was firm and disciplined, and he's the one who saved him. This really forces us to ask, what is the real difference between caring for someone and just plain spoiling them? It's a question that's worth thinking about, not just for pets, but in our own lives too. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.